and stressful for several people, and I was dealing with some stuff on Friday, and I didn't have a whole lot of peace during that time. I didn't have a whole lot of peace during that trial, peace during that situation. But overall in our lives, do we have peace? Is this mic muted? Do we have peace? Do we have a peace that we might not understand? Do we have that peace? We've gone through the fruits of the Spirit, and we've spoke on love and on joy, and now we're into peace. As Christians, the Bible talks about how they will know us by our fruits. They will know us by what kind of fruits we bear, and not always do we wake up and do we love our neighbor. No offense. Not always do we wake up and we have a joy. There's times we wake up and we're in a bad mood. There's times we wake up, if you're like Leanne at, 2, 3 o'clock? I don't know how you can have joy waking up that late. Man, if I could sleep until 2, 3 o'clock, I'd have joy. But there's times we don't have love. There's times we don't have joy. And then there's times we don't have peace. As I was preparing this series and God gave me this verse here in chapter number 14, I thought, this is the dumbest story to talk about peace. This is the weirdest place to talk about peace. Here we see that right before this, there was the miracle of the feeding, and we see here that he sends them on their way, and as they're crossing the river here, as they're crossing the sea, that this storm arises. Now, it's probably a hurricane. It's probably some kind of storm. And I've heard of philosophers and all that go into the depths of the storm and what kind of storms they would be. And nevertheless, it was a storm. People right now in Galveston, they're going through a storm. They know what it's like to go through a hurricane. They know what it's like to go through through a storm. It was to the point of where the mayor said that if you decide to ride out the storm, to take a Sharpie pencil marker and put your Social Security number on your arm. So when they find your body, they can identify you. That's a storm. There's times in our life that we go through a storm. There's times in our lives that we wake up and not everything goes according to plan. I've had weeks like that where it seems like a snowball effect, where one thing happens and then it goes from bad to worse, to worse, to worse. And my joy is gone. My peace is gone. And when I look at my bank account and I don't have money in my bank account, my peace just seems to not be there. When I've got people calling me, hey, you got to pay your bill, and I don't have the money, or one of my kids gets sick, and I can't help them, and I love all 5 of my kids to death, and when I see one of them suffering, I don't have peace because they're going through this storm, through this trial. What kind of fruits are we bearing? What kind of fruits? Do we have peace this morning? Do we have peace in our hearts? I find it very interesting here that the first point I see is that be of good cheer, be at peace with God. Here in verse number 27, it's in your notes, it says, but straightway Jesus spake unto them saying, be of good cheer, be not afraid. And I just imagine that for a second. They're in the middle of this storm. They're in the middle of this trial. They're in the middle of this circumstance. And I had a friend of mine go through cancer just recently. He was a professor at West Coast where I went to college. And he went through this trial, and he talked about how he read the same passage. And he thought, man, that is the weirdest. Why would Jesus say, hey, be happy? You're in the middle of a storm. How could I be happy? How could I be of good cheer? There's winds howling. There's waves coming up over the boat. I can't catch my footing. I'm grabbing onto the banister because if not, I'm going to fall. And things are falling everywhere. And I can't control anything in my life right now. I can't control anything in this situation. I'm sitting literally on this raft in the middle of a storm. And Jesus says, be of good cheer. Be of good cheer. We need to be at peace with God. When circumstances around us come up and we can't change our circumstances, we can't change what happens on our day-to-day life, and we can't understand certain things. And 2 weeks ago, we had those tornadoes pop up out of the blue, and there we are, tornado sirens going off at what time, 1:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock, something like that. Tornado sirens are going off, and I thought to myself, why is it that it always happens on a Saturday night? Broken Arrow has storms Saturday nights. It's just like a 2015, we had tornadoes in May, and it happened on a Saturday night. I thought, what is with this? There's things that I was expecting a little bit of rain, not to be woken up by my wife saying, hey, tornado sirens are going off. We got to get into underneath the shoe closet. We're in the middle of a storm. Things in our life come up, and we don't understand these things. We don't understand why they come up. And I can imagine these disciples were thinking, man, Jesus, you know everything. Why did you send us out on this boat in the middle and knew we were going to hit a storm? I don't know about you, but I don't know if you've ever asked God, why am I in the middle of the storm? God, why am I in the middle of this circumstances? I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. I don't know why you put me in the middle of the storm. And what I could find from this verse is that it's so we can have peace with God. So we can realize that God is in control. So that we can realize, hey, we can stress about it, we can get upset about it, and you two, I know one day are going to be getting married. I can just tell it. You're going to wake up, and there's going to be a problem. There's going to be bills that are going to be paid, and we can stress about it. And number one cause of divorce is communication, is finances, and those situations, and it's a storm. This year, for the first time in 7 years, my company bank account overdrafted a couple times. In 7 years, it's never done that, and this year it did. Man, you want to talk about stress, it's stress. But you know what? I had a peace because I thought, I'm God's child. He's in control. Here, Jesus comes to him and says, hey, be of good cheer, be happy. But Lord, I'm in this trial. I'm in this storm. How can I be happy when this is? Be happy. The Bible says in John 16:33, these things have I spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. In other words, what he's saying is that, hey, greater is me that's in you than he that, or greater is he that's in you than that he that's in the world. In other words, I'm stronger. I can make it. I can get you through the storm if you just simply trust me. For those of you that might not know, I did something stupid. I like Facebook, but I hate it at the same time. And I got this friend request, and I always check, because of scammers, my 2 criteria to be a friend of mine is that you have to have more than just 2 pictures. None of them can be provocative, and you have to have mutual friends of mine. That's the way you can become my friend on Facebook, just to guard myself, protect myself. So this person sends me a friend request, and so I immediately look at the pictures, and there's probably 30, 40 pictures on there, all normal, just a teenager. So I thought, okay, this is okay. So then I looked up mutual friends. We had 2 mutual friends, my cousin and another church member. And so I thought, okay, so I might not know this person personally, but it's not a robot. It's not a scam. This is where it's going to be. So I accepted the friend request. The person messaged me and a couple times, and I responded to the messages. I'm in here with another pastor from Owasso, and we're talking. This person's messaging me, and then it calls me. This person calls me on Messenger. I didn't know you could do that. So my laptop's sitting right here. My phone's sitting right here. My laptop pops up. Somebody's calling you. I said, how on earth is somebody calling me on my computer? And Pastor Sladen was like, that's weird. So I look at my phone, and he said, well, who is it? I said, well, it's the girl that just sent me a friend request. Neither of us were thinking, so I accepted it. When I did that, she gained control of certain areas of my computer. Took a screenshot of me off my laptop. You can see where I'm sitting there in front of my laptop. She accessed my camera. Then she started manipulating photos. Brother Sladen thought it was humorous. I didn't find it too humorous. I'm sitting there and I start to panic because I start to think, because it starts telling me if you don't pay us money. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if she's accessed this, I've got important information on my laptop. What else is she accessing? What kind of information is she getting to? And then she was manipulating photos and one thing after another. My wife thought it was humorous too. And I'm like, this is not funny. This is a storm. I'm trying to study for my message on peace, and I've got my Bible out, I've got my notes out, I've got everything out. I'm trying to do this about peace, and this is happening. My wife simply said, hey, don't worry about it. Block her, deactivate your account, it'll all work out. But at that moment, I was frazzled. There's times that we might not understand. We might not see what these things go on, but here the Bible says that these things have I spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. In Colossians 1:20 it says, and I have made peace through the blood of the cross, by him to reconcile all things unto him. By him I say, whether they be things in earth or things in heaven. When we're going through a storm and we're going through a trial and we feel like our boat is being rocked and we feel like the waves around us are crashing and we feel like we're getting overcome by this sea, be of good cheer. You say, wow, that's hard. Oh, trust me, I know. I understand it. Second thing I see here is that have peace and trust him and go to him. In verse number 28, it says, and Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me to come unto thee on the water. So now we see here, a little bit farther in the story, not only are we in the middle of a storm, not only are we in the middle of this trial and this tribulation, and we see the waves and we see the wind and all that happen, but then nutcase Peter here says, hey, if it's really you, let me walk on this stormy water. Let me overcome this and come to you. Let me defeat this and walk on this, and let me get to you. When I read this story, I laugh every time because I think, I would be there. I love water, but I am terrified of water as well. My wife wants me to go on a cruise for our 10th anniversary. And I told her no for two reasons. One, I'm claustrophobic. I know they're like a city. But I'm still thinking, I can't drive my truck. You know what I mean? I'm like, I can't drive my truck. No. Then I'm thinking, what if a storm came up? And I'm on the middle of this boat in the middle of the ocean, and what if a hurricane popped up? What if? No. I'm going to be like a cat. You are not dragging me onto that boat. If I was in the storm with Peter, I would have been holding onto the banister, probably crying like a girl. I'd have been sitting here thinking, oh man, how are we going to get out of this? What are we going to do? This boat's about to break apart. We're in the middle of the sea. What am I supposed to do? Then they see somebody walking on the water. And then Peter says, hey, I got an idea. Lord, if that really is you, let me walk on the sea to you. How many times in our life have we gone through a trial, we're in the storm, and we said, hey, Lord, if you're really in control, if you're really in charge, give me peace to walk on the storm. Give me peace to get to you. How many times do we stop and really ask God to open the door? How many times do we sit there and beg God? And I've taken time to beg for my kids. And I've taken time to say, hey, Lord, they're in school. And Lord, I pray that they won't get away from you, that they will get closer to you. And Lord, I know Oliver's only 9, but man, how fast these 9 years have gone. These next 9 years are going to go even faster. And then he's going to be an adult. And Lord, let him marry somebody that wants to come to church. Let him marry somebody that has a good walk with you. Let him marry somebody that wants to be a good person. Let him marry who you want him to marry. I've taken time to pray and ask God for doors, and things have happened here at the church, and we went through this building project, the foyer there, and I've mentioned this to the men, and as we were going through it, that was actually during the time that my bank account overdrafted. And we start tearing open doors and start tearing down walls and start buying things. And we're putting things on the credit cards. And I'm thinking, Lord, I got to pay these bills somehow. Lord, this has been the slowest year for roofing that I know of. My account's over. If I have to pay these bills now, I cannot pay these bills. A guy came in and signed a contract with us, and you know the story. After we got done with his roof, he said, "Hey, I want to make a donation to your church for the building project." So, man, awesome. Yeah, we'll take that. Right now, definitely. We bought $1,600 in material out there, and he writes a check for $1,600. If that's not God, who is it? If that's not God, then I don't know what is. We're sitting here in a trial, and we're in this storm. We're in this predicament. The Bible says in Isaiah 26:3, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee." It's not always easy to take that step. I can't even fathom it. When I was preparing this message, I was trying to take time to just fathom looking at the water and stepping on it. It's insane to think about. But here Peter, he says, Lord, if it really is you, if you're wanting me to have good cheer, if you're wanting me to trust you, if you're wanting me to have peace, if you're wanting me to be able to trust in what you're saying, let me go to you. The Bible says in Colossians 3:15, "And let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to the which also ye are called in one body, and be thankful." The one body is talking about the body of Christ, the church, the local body. Body of believers. Yeah, our men here at the church, we have a group text, and we'll text each other when there's a trial, when there's a problem. When this was going on Friday, the first thought I had was, let me call my wife, and then let me text the guys. Say, hey, pray for me right now. Some people, they might think, hey, this is not that big of an issue. But to me it was. And to me it was the circumstances that I could not get around, and my boat was getting rocked, and I could not figure out why. And so I texted the body of believers, the men of the church, and said, hey, pray for me. What's funny is right after that, I started getting text messages, done, praying. You got it. I had a peace that I can't even understand. I had a peace that I can't comprehend. We gather here on Wednesday nights and we have prayer meetings. We gather here on Wednesday nights and we take time to pray. On our men's Conquer meetings on Friday, we take time to pray. And you know what I find very funny is that, or very exciting to me, is that our first men's Conquer meeting, we got here, we got on our hands and knees and we prayed for the bus route. We got on our hands and knees and we prayed that God would open doors. And because of that, I met Joseph, who now Patricia's here and Jared's here. And I think, man, if we wouldn't have had that meeting, or if none of us would have come, and it's a Friday evening, we're all tired. The next day we had to go put up a fence. I think it was the next day. No, I guess it's the following week. But we're all tired. We all want to get home. We all want to, last thing we want to do is really just be at church again. I'm just kidding. That sounded bad. Pastor shouldn't say that. But we got here. We gathered. We prayed. If you're going through a trial, reach out to the body. You're called in one body. And then what I find funny here, I use the word funny a lot, but what I find interesting here is that, and be ye thankful. So we're to have good cheer. We're to be happy. Hey, I'm in a storm. Yay, I got to do this. Yay. And now I have to be thankful. Thank you, Lord, for sending this storm my way. I'll say this, and my wife and I, when we got married and I worked for another company, I didn't get paid peanuts. My wife was a stay-at-home mom. I did not make hardly any money. We had nothing. Then my second child came, and right before my second child was born, I lost my job. I was making $12.50 an hour, which, as you know, is nothing. You can't pay hardly rent or food or anything like that. And so we had obviously nothing in savings account. My daughter was born, and I thought, oh, man. I had a piece about me to start a roofing company. I thought, Lord, what are you doing? Here we are in September. Roofing is good in March, April, May, June, and July. Roofing is great. September, it's not good. October, it's worse. November, it's the worst. December, it gets even worse. February, it's the absolute worst. So we're going downhill here, and you want me to start a roofing company and be thankful for it too? My wife's my witness. Every bill that came up, my wife and I would pray and say, God, this is your company. We're your children. You tell me what you want us to do. There was one time that I started panicking. We had 2 big bills coming up, and I was frustrated. I tried to go and apply at JCPenney's. So I have Leah with me, and I walk over to the kiosk, and Leah's moving around like a monkey. And so I walked back over to Krista in the playground with Oliver, and I said, here, take her. I'm going to go fill out this application. So I get back to the kiosk. It was working. Now I get there, do it, and the stupid thing shuts down. I asked the lady, I said, can you fix it? She's like, no, Tex will have to just come in tomorrow and fill out an application. Seriously? This is my luck that I can't even fill out an application? We get done with what we're doing. We get home, and there's a light blinking, one of those on our voice recorders. I push play, and the lady goes, hey, a friend of mine told me about your roofing company. I want you to do a roof for us. We already have the insurance paperwork. All right, Lord. You're in control. You're controlling this storm. I just need to trust you. And I need to be thankful. Fast forward 3 years, we went through another storm. Our books, our year, our budget, we dropped almost 60-70%. I had to lay off everybody, including my brother. Once again, going into Thanksgiving time, I had like $400 in my account. I had nothing in my account. I had a $900 payment about to be taken out 3 days later. And I'm thinking, so I decide, you know what? I'm going to just quit. I'm going to go into Border Patrol, and I'm just going to be done with this. Obviously, God's not in this anymore, so I'm just going to go back into law enforcement. So I'm going to go into Border Patrol. So we go down to Dallas. I take the exam, all that stuff. I've never had a problem with these exams before. They said it'll be about 2 months before you get a response on if you're going to get accepted or not. I said, okay, we got to make it for 2 months. 2 days later, 2 days, I get an email, you didn't make it. What? I said, Lord, really? You're not even going to let me out of this now? Really, Lord? I started getting upset. But then I had to humble myself again. I had to say, you know what, God? You're in control. God, this is your company. 2014, we had the best year ever. 15, even better. 16, even better. 17, not so good. I get a call from our general liability. Hey, you owe us $42,000. We expect the check in 2 days. Good luck with that. Last thing I see here, and I'll finish, is the third thing is be at peace with God and don't take your eyes off him. In verse number 30, it says, but when he saw the wind boisterous, in other words, when he saw the storm, he was afraid, and he began to sink. Have you ever done that when you're going through a trial, when you're going through something and you get worried? And because you're worried, then your peace and joy just seems to go away. That's you sinking. That's when I sink. But then he cried, saying, Lord, save me. I've done that. I'm going through this trial, and I feel like I'm sinking, and I feel like I can't go any farther. And I have sat there, and with a loud voice, I've cried, God, I need your help. Lord, save me. And immediately, without hesitation, without thought, and immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? Why did you doubt that I was in control? There's a song that is playing, and I'll be honest with you, I don't like the song, but I love the lyrics. When did I forget that you've always been the king of the world? When did I forget that you are in control? When did I forget? When did I start looking at Christopher here in the mirror and I'm a big boy and I can do things. I can handle things, and I can do this. I can fix this problem, and I can handle this situation. I don't need you, God. I can do it. I'm a big boy. And then I realize that I start sinking. And then I have to ask myself, when did I forget that you've always been the king of the world? When did I forget that you created everything? Because you created everything, you can solve everything. I can't. The Bible says in Philippians 4:6, be careful for nothing, but in everything in prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and mind through Christ Jesus. The world does not understand our peace. I had people asking me if I was literally retarded for starting a church. I had people telling me, hey, a hurricane hit, you don't need to be up here, go down there, there's a lot of work. Hey, things happen, you shouldn't take off Sunday because, hey, you got to make as much work as you can. You got to make as much money as you can. Yes, you trust God, and yes, you're a good Christian, but, you need. And then I start thinking, when did I become the one that's gaining the money? When did I become the one why am I relying on me and not God? Last thing here, and I'll close. Romans chapter number 3 and verse number 17. And the way of peace have they not known. In other words, the world has not known it. There is no fear of God before their eyes. The world doesn't understand peace. They think peace comes from partying. They think peace comes from having a lot of money. They think peace comes from having a nice truck. I remember going through college. It was a 50-50 chance my car would start. I had no alternator in it. So I had to charge the battery just to get somewhere. But by the time I got there, when I first started out and battery's fully charged, I'd be going about 40 miles an hour. By the time I got about 6 miles, I'm flooring it and it's going about 8. And I'd roll into AutoZone where I worked and pull out the battery, charge it up. And then when I got home, I had to do the same thing. I thought, man, God, if you just gave me a good vehicle, I'd have better peace. God, if you just gave me a truck. I went and looked at a truck at that time, and brand new F-350, and I thought, man, God, if you just gave me this, if you let me get the loan out on this, I will have peace like you could never understand. Like Keith shaking his head. I'd have peace until that first payment was due. I'd have peace until I had to gas up a diesel truck in California. I'd have peace until I had to change tires on a diesel truck. I go with stock, and my truck cost me about $1,300 to put tires on it. Oil changes are now $80, $90. I'd have peace until all that came in. Our world says, hey, if you want to have peace, buy a bigger house. Hey, if you want to have peace, upgrade to this, upgrade to that. When the reality of it is, if we want to have peace, we just simply need to look at Jesus. Keep our eyes on him. Don't look at the world. Don't look at the trials. Don't look at the storm. Just trust him.